Okay, fantastic. Hi, Boris. Welcome to Fatal Dates.
Hi,
Thank you so
Susanna.
much. Thank you so much for being on the show. It's such an honor to me. You're a fantastic writer whose work has made a difference to my life. And I can't really believe that I'm experiencing the honor of having you as a date on my show. So I'm very grateful. As I was just saying to you before we began the recording, I've actually spent the afternoon rereading your fantastic book, Becoming an Artwork, which is brilliant. And I'm once more very inspired and full of topics that I want to discuss with you. But the overriding topic that I want to discuss, as you will know, my show is called Fatal Dates, for Jean Baudrillard's book, Fatal Strategies. And it is my attempt to see how it's possible for humans to communicate and have a genuine connection, a sexual connection, a romantic connection in such a very confusing time when we're all so overwhelmed by our images, other people's images. So something that comes out of the thoughts I've had from your book is, what do you think the possibility is for us human beings if we are engaged, as you say in your book, in a very plausible argument, in a mass project of turning ourselves into artwork? I think you say in your book, the narcissistic desire is the desire to look oneself through the gaze of others. And since we're all spending so much of our time manufacturing images for ourselves in the way we present ourselves on the internet predominantly, and spending so much time in the thought of self-creation, rather than in the thought of connection with other people and how that might change us or alter the artworks that we're producing for ourselves. So I wonder if you have any general thoughts for me about the possibility of human connection, always a very fragile and illusory thing, I utterly know, in this new age.
Okay, good. We begin now?
Yeah, we begin. We're filming. We're here.
We're here. So to begin with connections. Well, connections is a different, or let's say, connection is a difficult and some kind of unclear word, because the concept of connection presupposes somehow in our imagination a concept of the network. Mm-hmm. So some people connected by certain channels. That could be channels of information, that could be channels of emotion, that could be channels of love, I don't know, yeah, but some channels. Some energy that are basically like electric energy, which is the basis of the network and the basis of imagination of certain kind of rhythm, yeah, network as rhythm. So we speak about uncreated, unlimited energy that's circulating among certain points, and we are these points. Yeah. That is a certain delusion / post-delusion image that emerges in my imagination when I speak about connections, and especially connections in the internet age. I wouldn't say that is an image I had in mind when I wrote my book. Because, you know, I'm not very much, or let's say so, I do not believe in the energy. Maybe it's because I'm mostly tired, yeah, and I prefer to sleep as to be acting, yeah, in the world. And I prefer to read Deleuze sitting in my room in a kind of isolated and secure environment. I prefer that to any kind of emergence of the energetic fields and involving in some kind of energetically charged relationships. But it's, of course, a personal attitude. On the theoretical level, I do not believe in this, new metaphysics of energy, intensity. If you look at the electricity, when we speak about internet age, the internet is based on electricity.
Mm-hmm.
It's not unlimited. It's not unlimited play of science or something like a unlimited infinite flows of energy and information. It is something based on electricity, and production of electricity is something that is finite and restricted. In our day of lacking of energy, lacking of this, lacking of that, we know that electricity is also limited. And what's interesting, we are paying for electricity. For example,
Mm-hmm.
we didn't pay, at least maybe partially in the context of Catholic Church, but in general, we didn't pay for God's grace. We didn't do that, but we pay for electricity. So we can assume that divine energy is infinite, but we cannot assume that all the other kinds of energy are unlimited and infinite. So what I have in reality, it is a limited amount of energy. It's my energy.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a point in some system of relations on the network. There is nothing that flows inside me or through me. I am kind of generator of energy. Whatever I do, it's produced by a certain effort. Also, to speak, to communicate is an effort. Yeah, you are tired after that. And it's not, and it is an effort that is produced by your body, by you. Yeah, it is an effort. It is an energy. You spend this energy in communication. Looking from this energetic standpoint that I don't discuss in the book, but if you are interested in it, let us develop that. Looking from this, or in this perspective, also from the standpoint of economy of energy and economy of energy exchange, what I have to accept from the beginning is the fact that I'm a body and that I'm an object. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
People say they don't want to be objectified.
Not everybody says that. The public discourse might say that, but not everybody says that. But sorry, please continue.
No, but there is a kind of widespread discourse. But to disobjectify oneself, it means to die. Yeah, then my soul leaves my body, and actually, what it leaves is precisely the object. Yeah, it's precisely the point
Right.
of a corpse. So, but I'm already a corpse during my lifetime. Yeah, I'm already this body. It's maybe a living corpse. It's maybe a moving corpse, but it's still a corpse. It is still an object. And being an object, I cannot escape objectification. I can't escape being regarded as an object. But and that is a aspect of this talk about the relationship when I agree with Sartre. Yeah, when I agree with Sartre, that we are always objects for the others, and the others as objects for us, and it is an ontological condition that we cannot escape or should not escape. That means for Sartre, so that I think it's coming from Heidegger for a certain kind of tradition. He thinks that to be an object means to be used. So the object is kind of seen as a tool.
Yes.
Seen as a tool. And you find it in Heidegger, for example, when he says that we discover things, we discover objects, he doesn't speak about objects, he speaks about things. That we discover things as tools, yeah? So, and that is why I speak about an artwork, because an artwork is not a tool for us. Yeah, we don't use it. So it is an object, but it is not a tool. It is an example, a complicated example, actually, much more complicated than it seems to be. Yeah? And Heidegger had also his difficulties with it. Is an object, maybe we use it. We use it, for example, in the context of art business, yeah? In a context of curatorial practice, in a context of museum and museum exhibitions, we use the individual artworks, but by doing so, we care for their remaining materially and formally, it is the same, self-identical. So we care for them, and we care for them in a way that we want to keep their material form. That is something that is specific for our time. We should not forget that, for example, before the French Revolution, and because of establishment of this new category of art, yeah, through the first exhibitions of art in Louvre and then all around the world, in the churches and palaces, paintings, sculptures were substituted by the new sculptures and paintings if they seemed to be obsolete or damaged. There was no restoration, and there was no specific care about, let's say, stability of the material form. What we had before French Revolution, we had the artists as content providers.
Right.
The content was important, yeah. So I painted the Virgin, and if my painting is damaged, it is substituted with another later version of the image of the Virgin.
Right, right.
Yeah, and that is what I think comes now. Yeah? So we are at the, not quite at the end, but near to the end, to the period of art, a specific kind of care for material stability of an object. What is difference between artwork and normal thing? Artwork is secured and insured. Yeah, when you destroy the normal, let's say, urinoir, that's not a problem. When you destroy the urinoir by Duchamp or signed by Duchamp, you pay huge insurance. Yeah, that is actual undeconstructible because rooted in our economic system, difference between the artwork and the mere thing.
Can I ask? I don't want to interrupt you, but I want to ask one question. But here we're talking about non-human artwork, right? And what I've learned from your book is humans are artworks too. Is there a distinction? Humans are not insured. Sorry, I don't mean to derail you, but I just had to say that there.
It's an interesting question because it is not accidentally I speak about French Revolution. Mm-hmm. Because during the French Revolution, you have the emergence of art as desacralization of the traditional art. So the art is not used in the context of palace, the power representation of the churches, through religious representation, but is exhibited for the public, and the public cannot use it. Yeah. So we have this break between the public and the artwork, historical break, because before the French Revolution, you could always use any kind of the artwork, yeah, because they were all in private ownership. And then you create some kind of island, isolated of the normal everyday practice. So people come to a museum, to an exhibition, they can look at the artwork, but they cannot touch them. Yeah? This only looking but not touching, that is the definition of art. That is what art is. Now, if you look at the social and political context of the time, that was a time of emergence of the right of man. And what does it mean that I have rights? That means people can look at me but not touch me. That is a definition of human rights.
Yes, it's true. It's true.
Yeah. So the analogy between artwork and human body, we see it from the beginning of modernity, so of radical modernity, so from the beginning of the French Revolution. And we also speak about, with Kant, or after Kant, about human being having a goal in itself. And we speak in the same way about the artwork. Artwork can be used because it has its goal in itself. Yeah, it can be only admired and maybe judged.
Yeah,
but not violated in its physical integrity.
So interesting. I have to say, on this show, sometimes I interview people who go on, for example, internet dating sites. And a common complaint that people say about those sites is often the other people they encounter there do not want to meet up in the real world, that the secret function of these internet dating sites is so that a human artwork can present their beautiful photos, receive the acclaim of the public, receive likes, receive votes, receive offers from lots of different sorts of people who would like to meet up with them. But that's enough. They never need to make up. The messy business of touching has been removed, even if that isn't consciously the awareness of the person who's putting their beautiful photos out there. And this is a frustration. This is a frustration. Am I hearing from you that if you become an artwork, effectively, you cannot have sex with people?
Well, look, Mona Lisa.
Mm-hmm.
We cannot ask her if she likes all the people that coming to her and look at,
Mm-hmm.
because it's only a painting.
Mm-hmm.
But imagine Mona Lisa sitting there, and thousand people come and look at it.
Right.
I think Mona Lisa would say, I would prefer they look at images of me and not at myself. Yeah. Because even if people coming to you to look at you, it's exhausting. Yeah. It's exhausting. And, you know, we tend to speak about, there is a certain tendency, yeah, to speak about self. Foucault wrote his books about self and self-care in a context of sex
Mm-hmm.
relationship. But it seems to me that it is not a good field for investigation of the self and the own body, because, for example, my relationships to my stomach or my liver is much more important for me as all my sexual relationships put together. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, it's obvious. My real relationship to my body is based on a concept of care and being healthy. That's why Foucault was interesting at the beginning, because he started with this. He started with the clinic, but then he went into the wrong direction with a sexual relationship. And sexual relationship is, of course, always a use. Yeah, I use my body, I use a body of the partner. It is work. Yeah, it is work. It is work like every other work, pretty formalized,
Mm-hmm.
and in a certain way went through a long period of codification
Mm-hmm.
and a rule application, and we follow all these rules, and we live in a culture,
Mm-hmm.
so it's all very formalized. It's not very far from any other works like administrative work or industrial work.
It's so interesting that you say this, because the person I interviewed before you is a woman, a writer called Lottie Latham, who is also a sex worker, a submissive sex worker. And I came into this in a very naive way. She was telling me very clearly, her work is work. You know, I was interrogating with her, is sex work work? Yes, she said it's work. And in a capitalistic society, it's as valid as any other work. When I attempted to talk to her about surely bodies, somebody else's body inside you, she told me an anecdote that she worked as a dresser in a shop windows. She had to make sculptures. She had to burn something. She burnt herself. She said, you know, in the course of my daily work, my body is affected in similar ways as if I have sex with people. That was an interesting exchange for me. I think often I have begun this project, and I do this project because I have some very outdated romanticism, and part of the project for me is an interrogation of that. Can I just say, when I hear you speak, it's so wonderful to hear you speak. It's so wonderful to read your words and to see also how you speak with the exact clarity. Part of the experience, though, of hearing you and hearing what you have to say, it's a very, I use this word with caution, but it's a very materialistic one. You know, I understand the deep implications of that word, particularly for someone who grew up in the Soviet Union. I'm using this word ill-advisedly. I want to ask you, am I a fool for thinking there to be anything other than materiality. You see, my reading of Baudrillard has shown me, my initial reading of Baudrillard, I think, was a massive misreading of Baudrillard. As I have read more, what I've come to understand about that is what he is saying is the perfect crime of our age is the crime of the death of illusion, that what I may feel in wanting to have a connection with somebody else, to want to go, okay, I'll say it, on a kind of mystic plane with somebody else, is an illusion. And really, if we're to be authentic authors, academics, analyzers of the world, we must dispense with illusion because it creates so much damage. But what I take from Baudrillard, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is, however, illusion is necessary to pleasure and to live wholly in a materialistic realm where sex is just work. Your closest relationship is to your liver rather than to your wife. Yes, it's all true, but isn't that to drain something pleasurable out of life, even if what I'm draining is something wrong?
Well, there are many things in our life that are unpleasant. For example, also treating your life, treating your liver or whatever your, I don't know, a liver cancer or something like that, it's also pretty unpleasant. So there are many unpleasant things. Reflection and thinking are not unpleasant.
True.
There is a pleasure in reflection, in thinking, in speaking, in writing. So even if you write and speak in a way that is unpleasant for the others, there is a pleasure to say all these things.
Definitely there is. Definitely there is.
So it is not whatever you say, it is less about life. It is less unpleasant than life itself.
So you seem to be saying there to me that fantasy is perfectly valid. And I have a strong interest in theory itself and the degree to which theory itself is fantasy. And I seem to remember that in Fatal Strategies, Baudrillard says, in the end, the only fatal strategy is theory. Is theory fantasy?
Yeah, theory. But, you know, yeah, to go back to your example with sex worker, yeah, if you are used and you use, you become used. Yeah, you become kind of damaged. It is a problem with all kind of work. And of course, when I practice theory, it is also work. It is actually a very exhausting work because what does it mean to make theory? In our world, it means writing on the computer.
Mm-hmm.
But when you are sitting in the front of computer, it is not good for your eyes.
Mm-hmm.
It is not good for your vertebra. The pulse in general is very bad for your health.
Mm-hmm.
So when you are writing, when you're producing the text and producing theory, sorry for me being so materialistic and so Soviet, but actually Soviet was spiritual, anti-materialist.
No, I understand. I have read The Total Art of Stalinism. May I just recommend to people watching? Also, this is a fabulous book by Boris. So yes, I understand. But please.
I'm not. So when I say to myself, now I become to theorize. That means that I put myself in front of computer and begin to produce a text. And I'm waiting for the pain in my back and the general feeling of exhaustion. So you produce your text, and the question is why you do so.
Mm-hmm.
I discussed that partially in my book about the care, in the philosophy of care. It is, of course, self-design. It is, of course, self-aestheticization. That is what especially artists doing. If you come to the now it's different. The artists, they contact them, they show the CV and send you some access to the website. But in the early time, if you come to an atelier, then artists would say, "Don't look at me. Yeah, look at my paintings." I think it is what Lacan quote very well. Yeah, he said that art production is an attempt to switch the eyes of spectator for the body of the artist to the body of the work. Yeah, it's a kind of a camouflage. It is an attempt to put himself, herself under a screen, so that the people look at the screen and not at the real body. It is very obvious in the case of art, but the same is a theory. Yeah, you can also say, "Read my books." Yeah, why you look at me? Read my books. Yeah. So
something I have learned, or something I suspect by reading your books. You don't say this overtly, but something that I have gleaned from your books, something I have learned from your books, is a function of an artist today might be about decoding art, decoding a mass cultural experience, which, as you have also shown me, and as Baudrillard has shown me, we live in a totally aestheticized world, and it is aesthetics that has replaced religion, although there is an argument to be made that technology replaces now aesthetics. But what I was going to say is that I have come perhaps to think that theorists are artists. And I certainly, when I look at your work and when I hear you talk to me here, and when I see the magnificent artwork that is Boris Groys, I feel that is it not actually a secret that theorists, with their critical eye of deconstruction about what's going on, and you're also a very celebrated art critic, has it not become the truth that it is the art critic who is the artist, because the art critic is untangling the art in the only way that art remains perhaps for us? What do you think about that? Are you secretly an artist?
It's obvious, yeah, because everybody is.
Okay, but you know what I'm saying. Yeah, but you know what I'm saying. Has your eye, acumen, intelligence, is that the true place of art today? Is it the interaction of someone as brilliant as you with an artwork? Yes, you don't need to be modest. It's okay. Is not that the electricity? Again, I'm using, and I was very aware before when you talked about, and I brought up the word connection, and then you talked about connection, and I was thinking as you were talking, what an ugly word connection is, what a mechanistic word connection is, how it reveals, if I'm going to, in another term from one of your books, but I have bared a device to myself about what I am in using the word connection. It itself indicates how much a very materialist, technologically based society has affected my head. But anyway, what I'm going to say to you is I think I get more thrill, but maybe this is just me, in reading your analyses of art and culture than I often get in looking at art and culture itself, which makes me feel that it is theorists who are artists in our very complicated day and age, which is so suffused with images, we don't know where to look. What I want from an artist, from someone like yourself, is to decode it and tell me.
Well, that is, of course, true. You speaking about aestheticization of the world.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when I enter the world, for example, the world of today, as you say, is internet and so on. What I see, what is my first impression, is that everything is aestheticized. Everyone is aestheticized. But there's one thing that is not aestheticized. It's me. it's myself.
Mm-hmm.
Because when I enter the internet for the first time, I find all possible things, but I don't find me. I put
Mm-hmm.
my name and I think I do not exist. Yeah. And we see that this fact makes people nervous. That is the beginning of this desire to become an artwork. It is desire to be present, to be also aestheticized, to be also aestheticized.
Well,
Also,
I have to say, to exist, I would say to you, I mean,
to exist as an
to
object.
exist, to exist
As
at
an
all. I
object.
think a process that I have been through. So you have had a very distinguished career predating the internet, but an experience of some lowly person like me is as follows. I am a novelist. I wrote a novel. My desire was to be one of a very secret novelist. I would imagine to have a vast, my publisher, the PR people, they can deal with the throngs of the public who are so interested in me and my novel. And I know from having read your texts that the desire, it's not just the desire to show yourself that is, for example, narcissistic. It is also the desire to step back, be secret and private, that is also narcissistic, because there you can knit together more effectively a self-image that you later can come and present. But Boris, just to speak in brief, the cruel awakening that I discovered is that it's not enough to write a novel. Nobody cares about such things these days. Before I wrote this novel, I had no social media account, nothing. My novel, in fact, is about my horror of technology in many ways. No, I would never do something as vulgar as that. And the reality that dawned on me is, in which case no one will read my narcissistically produced novel. That in order to have any audience at all as a new artist, writer entering this space, this already existing internet space, it is compulsory to have some sort of internet presence or to have committed an outrageous crime. If I really wanted to be anonymous, it seemed to me the only thing I could do is a public scandal. Then I wouldn't have to talk about it, but my name would be known and people would know enough to go and buy my books. So I was forced into the strategy of becoming an artwork. And I have to tell you, I have been seduced by it. You know, I am generally speaking a messy looking, intellectual person. But in order to do this show, which is also a promotion strategy ultimately for books I will write, books I'll write in the future, and also a promotion strategy for the book I wrote in the past that I had no presence for and nobody would know anything about. But in order to do that, I've set up social media accounts. I wear, my low-cut top in a way I would never have done before. I make selfies of myself. I put them online. I count how many followers I have. And I become immersed in that world to the detriment of the true work that I began that work in order to promote. So I wonder, do you have advice for me? Should I continue down this path? What should I do?
I have no advice. I have no advice because look, if we become autobiographical, I never did anything to be present in the media or some kind of public space. Never ever in my life. I have no social network accounts or whatever. So I made, biographically speaking, zero effort to be present in this sense.
Lucky you.
Yeah, I see that. And you know what the answer is luck. Yeah, I want to say that. So if this presence makes you lucky, yeah, I don't know if it is, but if it makes you lucky, it's a question of luck. It simply happens to you. You are just living. I was just living, and it happened to me that I was asked to do this, that, yeah, write this and that, and I did it, and it was read, and then I was asked again, and so on and so on. I never really tried to do anything. I must say. That is maybe the reason why I never wrote any novel. And I decided very early in my life not to be an artist, because I know and I knew from the beginning that if you do so, you have to sell yourself, because there is a certain kind of market, and you have to compete on this market in a very strange way that people probably do not believe, but in a very strange way. There is no market for the intellectual discourse. You actually, if you develop a certain, as you say, the constructive, whatever discourse, but whatever kind, maybe you compete if you want to get some university position, maybe yes. But I never tried. I took what was given to me. But the intellectual discourse is very badly paid. It doesn't bring you any money. People actually are not interested in doing something that requires a lot of work, also learning and all of that. And they also do not compete in this sphere. So if you just persist in this sphere, so you're just living, I was living, just talking to the friends and so on and so on, then at a certain point in time, you are invited to do it publicly. I must say, speaking about my own history, I was very sick as a child. And I never went to a school because I could not go to a school. So 5 or 6 years, I was living in my apartment with my parents in total isolation. I almost never met anybody. In that time, I read a lot of books and literature. I began to read English, French, and German. And so at the end of this period of seclusion, I was relatively well read. And I think retrospectively, it was, for example, a great luck. Yeah, because if you are involved in this kind of activities, it is difficult to read a lot and to think about that and so on. So this kind of confinement, and involuntary confinement, was productive for me. So I write about art, about this as art, but I never wanted to compete with the artists. Yeah, you say that what I do is a kind of artistic gesture, yes, but it's not commercial and not commercialized. It is. Yeah, I don't enter a certain kind of competition. Yeah.
I understand. Part of me wants to say to you, is that your historical experience? Would it be the same if you were in your 20s, in your 30s today? Could you follow the same route? Would you have your own Instagram account posting selfies of the books you had been reading in your isolation? Do you think it is still possible to do that, what you have done in this age?
I think so. Because I know some people who did it.
Yes.
Much younger as I am. There is a certain precondition from this. So if I compare my experience with the experience of other people also much younger than me, that practice the same way of life and are okay with that, you have to have a good taste. A good taste in literature, good taste in art, but it's not so important. You have to have a good taste in relationship to people. So you have to have friends who are also intelligent, subtle, and able to appreciate what you are, what you are thinking, what you are saying. You have to look for this kind of people, and you have to be interested in them. And when you are interested in them, they are interested in you. And then because after all, when you look at the world as it is, everything happens in very small circles, very small circles. All this digital revolution happened in a very small circles.
Mm-hmm.
A good, for me, a good example of that was at the time of 9/11. Bush and Bin Laden had a common law firm in America. So whatever big events coming, when you begin to analyze their origins, these origins are very small. It's very small group. Such was existentialism, such was, if you look at French culture, such was the history of avant-garde, all small groups, people, unknown to the others. I don't think that something changed because there are some things that never change. A lot of things changing, but there are some things that are constant there. And if you are in a small group of talented people with good taste, it's a very good training because it's better, in general, it's better never appeal to any kind of audience. You should appeal only to the people who are also writing or who are also artists because they can understand what you're actually meaning. We have a common terrain and common experience, which is very important. Whereas the general audience that never, so people who never try to write anything or to produce any artwork, they cannot really appreciate what you are doing. They can like it or not, but they can't really appreciate. So if you look at my history, I always was friendly with interesting people, I must say. And I look at the younger people that are not so much known now, but seem promising to me.
Mm-hmm.
They are also friends with interesting people. Yeah, that is still there. In general, I don't believe in this audiences and this global and all of that. For me, it makes no sense. As I don't believe actually on the mass culture, because mass culture is produced by a small group of people sitting in some kind of designer, and mostly people who went through good or even exquisite designer schools, and I don't know. So all of that is illusion. Yeah, a reality is what you want to do and how you want to live. Yeah, do you want to live exciting life in competition, Do I want to go into the mountains and write a book about how we feel there? Do you want to sit home in front of your computer and write how you feel doing so, what I'm doing? It's a way how you want to structure your life
You
and
say
how you want to
that,
structure the presentation of your life.
you say that, and it's wonderful and inspiring to hear you say that. It has made me feel fantastic to hear you say that. But then I wonder, am I not now more materialist than you? You know, to be perfectly frank, Boris, I do all of this because there's a novel I would like to write, but I see that it will take me a long time to write it. And as you know, I do this work with Sublation Media, but I have a day job, and I spend my time, my energy, my work in my day job. I get up early in the morning in order to write, but still, it's only a couple of hours every day. It's not the immense amount of work that projects I have in my head would like to be spilt out. It takes time. So I would like, there's nothing I would like more than to go to the mountains and write my novel. But how would I eat? Where would I live? How would I provide the financial underpinning to wanting to do that? The dangerous illusion of that, you know, it is, in a way, it's a much cleaner experience to have a day job and then separate it and then have secret, private, early morning, in my case, whenever writing time. That is healthier. But there is a tremendous illusion that the internet and its ecosystems can provide, which is, well, you know, you could make money out of people supporting this podcast, for example. You know what I mean? I could begin to blur. I could, to an extent, prostitute my art by not having the clean separation of my day job, and that in order that I should feel more that I'm an artist, that I should be able to give up my day job, that I should have ancillary activities that can finance me in this. That's what I would say. So I like hearing what you say, but I wonder if you have become dematerialized in your saying of it.
Well, for me, money is not material. It's a science system. Money is a science system.
Yeah.
And because money is a science system, there's different relationship to that. Of course, in one respect, I would say I was lucky with my historical time, because I began to act in end of 60s and then 70s, 80s, beginning of 80s in the Soviet Union. And that was an interesting time in a way that the pressure, ideological and political pressure, was actually away. There was some kind of limitations of what you could say officially, but it was away. And the financial pressure was still not there. It came much later in the 90s. So it was kind of time without pressure, because life in the Soviet Union was very cheap, incredibly cheap. Yeah. So you had not to think a lot about your financial situation. Yeah, you could survive if you were ascetic enough. You could survive on almost nothing. That was, of course, good. I don't know if we have a similar situation today. If it is possible to find places of low financial pressure.
I should say in my own circumstance, that would be fine with me, but my kids would have some objections to that. That is the difficulty. I would like to take us to live in a field, in a house that we're constructing, and they can pick berries while I write my novel. But they're young teenagers, and when I impose this life on them, as I soon will, there will be problems. There will be problems. They will pick different wrong berries to give me, I think, once we establish this.
Yeah, it is because you are responsible.
I'm not that responsible. Let me tell you, I'm really not that responsible, but I have to be with my kids. The kids are the limit, are the place where I have to be responsible for sure.
I'm relatively irresponsible.
Okay. I'm
Yeah,
just so jealous. I want to go back to, you were
I
talking to me
was
about,
always. I have a wife, and she's very responsible.
well, there you
So
go. You have a division, a very good division of labor. Okay. Now you're giving me practical tips going forwards. I like it. Thank you. Can I ask you? I want to ask you a few things based on different things you've said. The first one I want to say to you is, how is your wife sufficiently, and by, you know, if you do not wish to discuss your wife, then you can just tell me to shut up. But is your wife sufficiently sophisticated and subtle so that when you tell her your relationship with your liver, for example, has more importance than your relationship with her, that she understands what you're meaning and is happy with that situation?
she is very sophisticated, and she thinks the same about her own liver. We married uh, as we accidentally met at a forbidden or half forbidden art exhibition in Moscow. And she liked what I said about the exhibition and liked what she said about this exhibition. So our marriage was from the beginning a collaboration and based on very good understanding of what other people think and how they feel. Of course, and when I say you have to do only with people who have the same taste, also taste in art, yeah, everything what one, or almost everything what one says about common experience, marriage, and so on, so on. It's actually a fiction, like division of labor, all of that. But what is really important is you have the same taste, because the taste is decisive. If you have the same taste in people, in discourse, in art, yeah, and in general, the same taste, you find the same things exciting and the same things do and irrelevant, then we can understand each other in many other aspects. So it is important that you meet and cultivate people with the same taste, similar experience and interests and attitudes. And I think if you do that, you survive. Yeah, you survive.
Do you think it would be possible to meet such people on an internet dating site?
You never, it's difficult to say because I never did it. I never used any such dating internet site. I actually use only email. Yeah. When I speak about internet and all these things, I'm watching other people. For example, my students to do this or that. For example, I don't know, Instagram or Facebook, things like that. I look at what they are doing, but I do not do it myself. Yeah. Precisely because I don't want to go out of a very close world I'm living in. Yeah, I think I do not need this greater world. I'm not interested in it. The fact that people read my texts is a miracle for me because I don't know anything about them. Yeah, and because of that, I didn't write this text for them. Yeah, so I don't know why they like it. I also don't know why they dislike.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So I live still like in a 19th century, and you think it's not up to date. I would say it's totally up to date. because our time is 19th century time. It's a time of counter-revolution, intellectual regression, celebrity culture, nationalism, wars, free trade, whatever domination of media, whatever characterization of the 19th century you take, it applies itself.
Apart from one thing, the one thing I would say that might be different is I think that, so I feel so lucky to have had a relatively analog childhood. And when I became an adult is when the internet took over, existed. So I have the luck of being in two worlds. And it seems to me that there is something that has gone on in our very particular time, and it won't even be true in the lifetime of my kids, which is the project of digitization itself. As part of the day job that I told you that I do, I work with digital archives. And a lot of the work that I do or oversee or work with others to do is to digitize photos, to digitize film, to make it presented and available on the internet. And something, for example, that I have learned from Baudrillard is the process of digitization. In a while, everything will be digitized. So what I'm saying isn't an issue, but the process of digitization itself is an obscene process because it takes everything from the real world and it puts it online, and therefore it has to be seen. For example, pornography. So before, much less pornography, but the action of digitization and there being a place to put pornography and make it available online means that we see it all because it's digitized and produced. And even if we're to not even talk about, obscenity of pornography, obviously the obscenity is not about the pornography. The obscenity is about the visualization of everything, or at least the illusion of the digitization of everything. The very act of doing this mass societal act of taking what was analog and making it digital is to put everything through a sieve, as it were, to make it all visible, to make it all ugly, and also to give it the illusion of being high definition that you can go ever deeper into it, ever deeper into it. So in Baudrillardian terms, the obscenity and what I don't like and seems like something that wasn't a 19th century project is the absence of shadows, the illusion that we live in a time where there's no shadows, that everything has been put onto the computer, and therefore we can zoom into it ever further, that nothing is hidden from us. And surely that is not something that was happening in the 19th century.
I don't know. First of all, I like books of Baudrillard very much. I also met him personally.
I saw you having an interview with him.
We had a conversation with him, where I criticized his idea of infinite play of signifiers, precisely speaking about the electricity and this thing. So I remember that. But look, I never understood this difference between real and simulation, because how you can say something is real, something is simulated, I simply don't understand. I never. If you are divine, I think he thought he's divine. If you are divine, if you are God, you can distinguish between real and simulation. But as a humble human being, I'm unable to do so. I see what I see. Is this simulation or real? How I know? I know it. It's like to say, do you really feel that? Who knows? So that point number one. The point number two, I went to the West at the beginning of the 80s, so 81.
Mm-hmm.
And some people I met through the 80s were people associated today with the birth of contemporary internet. So internet obsessed young intellectuals in England, but more in Germany and in Holland. Now, what they wanted to do, they wanted to go out. If you are intellectual, if you are artist, you want to go out. You wanted to transgress, you wanted to transcend. So it was about transgressing and transcending the the real, yeah, so offline world, yeah, the world of the family, state, yeah, social position. Now, I never understood that. I was very skeptical about that because I read some, I have a mathematical background. I read some books about that, and I realized that actually internet is a space of surveillance. What is freedom? Freedom is to speak, and then you forget what you said, and your partner forgot what you said, and everything disappeared in the thin air. That is freedom, yeah. You are speaking, and nothing remains, and then you feel yourself free. When we speak on the internet, we are surveyed, everything is recorded, we can go back to that. It is prison. Yeah?
It is prison, and it forces a consistency that is anti-human and horrible.
Yeah, it is prison. So now we realize that it is prison. People, they were all frustrated communists, yeah, my friends of the 80s, and they always played me that internet is a new world of communism, yeah, beyond capitalism. But actually, it is a prison. It is a, and the only thing you want is to break out of it. Yeah? So, if you say that your children and so on are in it, it's like children also in 19th century in developed European nations. They were living in their schools, in their families, yeah, and they want to go out, yeah. They want to be like Rambo, yeah. They want to go out. He was not from privileged family, but nevertheless, he want to go out. So, and I think maybe your kids, maybe next generation, they wanted to go out of the prison.
Yes,
I cannot say where they will be going to, but the experience that internet is not freedom, but prison, is developing relatively fast. And it is so, not because it is used in this way, as a surveillance capitalism or whatever. Internet is a machine of surveillance by definition. It was created to record and follow the conversation. Yeah. In the romantic time, you know, this dreams about calculating machines, yeah, in 19th century, people precisely wanted to create calculating machine to keep memory of the conversations, yeah, not to let conversations disappear.
Okay.
And now I tend to experience that as a freedom. I think what is freedom is unrecorded conversation, unrecorded thoughts. Not everything that I think I write about. And what I do not, what I think but not write about, that is a realm, an area of my personal freedom. My freedom is a terrain that is not accessible to the others and cannot be surveyed. So, as I said at the beginning, it's all the problem of strategy. There's no network, there's no all of that. There's your own strategy, how you invest your own energy, what is the way you're getting tired, what is the way you're getting excited, yeah. And it all has to do with proper functioning of your body, including your stomach, liver, and all of that.
Thank you so much. So amazing to hear you talk. It's so amazing to understand visibly in front of me what it means to be somebody who knows a great deal, who has read so much history, but not just a reader, but an analyzer of it, to have the frame of historical reference that you do. And this is something that I've absolutely got from reading your text, liberates you from the specificity of the moment, allows you the freedom to compare and contrast it to the 19th century, and allows us all, and me certainly when I read your books and hear you speak now, a sense of freedom, which is the impermanence that you have talked about in your books, the impermanence which I imagine comes from being a historical analyzer, but also, I can only imagine, and here again, I don't know what I'm talking about, having grown up in a regime in the Soviet Union that just disappeared. Yeah. And the privilege of seeing what looks like a monolith evaporate I'm sure there was much pain involved in it, but it must be a wonderful thing. And it's so inspiring to hear you talk and to read your text, because you make me feel that what I feel is an oppressive, for example, internet surveillance, lack of freedom. It's not. It's not always necessarily going to be that way. It brings me back to Baudrillard, because it brings me back to something I love in Baudrillard, which is theories of reversibility. In this show, often the reversibility that I attempt to deploy or discuss with my guests is the reversibility of sexuality. But there are many other strategies of reversibility. And you have just given, it seems to me, behind what you were saying there is the very freeing notion of reversibility, which says nothing. Everyone would like to think that they're the new big thing in town, or they put a stop to history. But what we can see, for example, in the history of art that you talk about so brilliantly in The Total Art of Stalinism, is art history is itself just a sequence of people thinking, well, this is it. Well, this is it. Well, this is it. And I'm so pleased to hear you say that the internet also is, in your opinion, just, or the surveyed internet that we're also sucked into, is just how it is. And in 30 years' time, it won't look that same way. I'm really inspired to hear you say that. It's great to feel that things are reversible. The last question really that I wanted to ask you, and thank you so much for talking for so long about such fascinating things, is you talked about a group of friends. You talked about the importance is not designing an audience. The importance is having an authentic group of people that you talk to. And within that small group, things can happen. But I say to you, those people that you're talking to, those are people. They're not artworks, are they?
Some of them were people who succeeded relatively in the art world, like Ilya Kabakov.
I don't mean they're artists. What I mean is they are not self-designed artworks. They are people who have not done that work themselves.
Yeah, they are. They are, because if they wouldn't be able to understand what I'm interested in. Of course, all of them are. All of them were interested in their own image. Yeah. Also, not necessarily artists, but also other people. If you look at the group of surrealists, for example, you see their interest for the people who were able to make extreme gestures in life, not only in art, but also in life. Yeah, that also happened. So if you know people who are interested in their image and use a very subtle and complicated strategies to create it, then you begin to understand what you are doing yourself, yeah, and how it's better to do it. Yeah, you always win something when you look at the people who do the same thing. But what you said about temporary character of everything, that everything in the flow. Yes, I really believe it. I never believed in any stability of anything. Yeah, art is disappearing. Yeah, and our culture is disappearing. We are living in interesting time that our culture disappears faster we die. Yeah, mostly people were dead before the world disappeared. But the world disappeared, but we still there. That is why so many people speaking about post this and post that. There is a
Hmm.
feeling that we survived our cultural milieus, our cultural predispositions, our cultural identities. Everyone speaks about identity, but never, nobody has it. Yeah. So we're living in interesting time when this transition becomes very obvious, and it is also 19th century uh, because it was time of the destruction, slow destruction of all the European institutions and cultural predispositions that then brought about the 20th century with this explosion of barbaric mass energy. So this, and at that time, this uh, dissolution of the cultural framework of the European existence was experienced as a progress. All the ideas of the progress come from the 19th century. Today is the same. People think they're living in the process of progress.
Hmm.
Yeah, the internet, now they have GPT, and so on, so on. They do not see this process of the fast dissolution of the traditional framework
Hmm.
of the Western society, cultural framework, institutional framework, which is much more interesting and fascinating thing.
So interesting. So
And
interesting. It
I'm
reminds me.
always for the flow.
Yes, which I have not read in full. Yes, I will go back and read it. It also reminds me of the floating world of Asian, of Japanese art, for example,
Yeah.
of oh, are you still there? Of the joy of making ephemeral things, the joy of capturing ephemeral moments, the release of not becoming an artwork, but of throwing it all away and of making disposable art and being the anti-permanent artwork, the anti-pyramid, as it were. And that's art that I have always loved. I wanted to ask you, before you said to me, there are some things that never change. You said some things change, but there are some things that never change. I'm interested. What are the things that never change?
It is change. The change never changed. It, if you look at the concept of utopia,
Mm-hmm.
utopia is the end of the change. Yeah,
Right.
when I reach utopia, being it positive utopia or negative dystopia, I always think about it as an end of the change. Paradise is the end of the change. People think about their retirement time as end of the change. Yeah. So we utopian expectation is the expectation of the end of the change.
Right.
But the change never ends, and all the revolutions is very. Walter Benjamin quote is very well. He says that a revolution is a stopcam. Revolution makes progress to stop. It's not a
Right.
locomotive of progress. It's a
Right.
attempt to stop the progress. So this attempt is never successful. The change from the change to the not change or the no change never happened. And that is a consolation. It is a consolation. It is a huge consolation. Why? Because I'm in a change, but Baudrillard was also in a change. 19th century was a change. Egyptian culture was in a change. Inca culture was a change. So everything was changed. And so I have a feeling that I live as everybody else. I live as people before me. I live as people after me. because we are all in a change. If I would believe that utopia is possible and the change can be changed to the no change, I would be desperate. But I don't believe it. I believe my situation is like situation of everybody else.
So what advice? So this is going to go out on Sublation Media, which is a Marxist orientated YouTube channel and publisher. And often the other interviews that are situated on this channel are a lot of people frustrated with the way things are, wanting revolutionary change, frustrated that there seems to be no strategies to do it now. What, if any, advice would you give to my colleagues appearing on this channel, having their interesting discussions, who are trying to work out what is it that we should do? How can change be enacted in such an unfair, unjust society as we live in? Do you have any advice there?
Of course not, but I have no advice for the others. But I must say that I enjoy the change. I don't expect this change to lead to something that I can enjoy. I enjoy or expect not what comes out of it, but I enjoy the change, and the enjoyment of the change I see as unchangeable in me. It's my personal utopia. So, and it's personal utopia not only of mine but of many other people. When we look at their writings and we look at their paintings, so.
But I in fact, what you're saying is tremendously hopeful. The perspective you're giving, the fresh perspective, perhaps for this channel that's being received here, is you're saying it's all going to change. Whereas what is often said is nothing is going to change. We just said you have come here as an agent to inform us, perhaps from outside our milieu, that of course everything is going to change. That
everything is going to change. People think that it will be stable. No, it will all disappear. Capitalism will disappear. You know, everything that emerged will disappear. Yeah, there's nothing.
Yeah, and that's the joy and pleasure. I completely.
Emerged, and so it's nothing that will not disappear. Capitalism will disappear. Internet will disappear. Everything will disappear. So everything that is oppressing you now will disappear. But you don't know what will oppress people that are born after you.
I know. I was going to ask, please tell me what is happening next. But
we don't know. But everything that oppresses you, you look at it, and I feel everything. You know, as I was in the Soviet Union. Yeah, it was Soviet. I always had a feeling that will disappear. And I looked at all of that, and also some other friends of mine, in a state of nostalgia. Yeah, I already saw it as disappearing. It thought it is oppressive, it dominant. But from my position, it was kind of a romantic ruin already that look at. And now internet divided between China, Russia, and America, place of the ideological wars and censorship and counter-censorship activities and so on, it's already a ruin. Yeah, so internet is already collapsing. And so I can look at the internet only in the mode of nostalgia.
Well, how fantastic and wonderful. Thank you so much. This is, in theory, theoretically constructed as a date. So I only feel it's fair at the end. You don't have to, but I wonder if you have any questions for me before we wrap up this amazing conversation.
Any question for you?
You don't have to. You don't have to. I just asked this at the end of these.
Maybe yes. Maybe yes. Do you make this conversation because you invite interesting people and you enjoy a conversation with them, or you have a certain goal that you would like to achieve, right? So it is a pure pure enjoyment of conversation as such, or you have a certain kind of project?
Of course, it's a messy, complicated thing. But what I would say is, I enjoy talking. I enjoy discourse. I enjoy conversation. I enjoy conversation with people who have thought about similar areas that I have thought about. And I am always fascinated by these conversations I have with people. Also, the experience that I've had in the world is lots of the things that are in my head are not talked about or seen anywhere. And it is only in very few books, yours included, that I read that I feel communality. But I think that these things I think, which are often not high-reaching theory, but quite pedestrian things about people, I think other people must think them too. It's part, and what I want to do is to get into people's heads and to make a space where it's possible in public to have these sorts of conversations about things that are not usually discussed. You know, the pure and true answer to all of this is, so I wrote a novel, and I would like to have a lot of time living in the woods with my unwilling children to write more novels. I've got a lot of ideas in my head, but I have come to understand that in order to, I've come to that I must be more strategic. Although what you've said to me, I'm going to go away after this conversation and have deep thought. I've come from this very high-minded, artistic, very innocent, naive, stupid, not wanting to deal in the realities of the world. And I've had quite a harsh education in the culture industry. I'm very happy to have found my colleagues at Sublation Media who are doing something strange and dirty on the fringes of the internet, which is much more in tune with my sensibility than you know. But basically, I wrote a novel. It was very unacceptable because it was a kind of crazy novel, which I really liked and enjoyed very much the hermit process of doing. But now what I'm doing is I'm writing some dating tips, some fatal dating tips, some things that I feel need to be said about how people relate to each other, which comes up. I won't go into it, but I've had various interesting occurrences in my private life. Reading that I've done of theorists rather than of self-help books has liberated me from a lot of previous historical issues that were in my head. And I feel I've got some clarity, and I want to share the clarity that I have received, because often messages, and not just to women, but to women and to men, messages about what romance, what love, what a connection with somebody else is, seems to me it's all, to use an English word, bollocks. And I want to talk about the bollocks, and that is a driving urge for me. So I also want to educate myself. So in doing this show, at the same time as doing the show, concurrently, I'm writing my dating tips, and they often change as I discuss with my guests. And I'm really brought up against my ignorance and also my assumptions, because, you know, I like to feel that I'm so free, but I'm not free at all. But every time I meet another guest, another bit of my head is challenged, and the project becomes a more subtle project, which is what I'm looking for. So to a great extent, I really enjoy the interactions. To another great extent, it is a form of marketing for my dating tips. And I hope that the sales of my dating tips allow me some small measure of being able to have some money in reserve that will let me quit my day jobs to write the very complicated novel that's sitting in my head, which is getting improved the longer that I don't write it. So that's how it is for me. But some people say to me, are these really dates? And they're always surprised when I say to them, to some extent, yes, they are. You know, I have I want to, you know, I want to know more about the people that I'm with, and I want to explore what it means to feel a connection with them. And that's a slightly taboo area, and people seem a bit shocked when I say that. But I very much privately understand the degree of connection with the other person. And now I'll be able to know, and was it a greater degree of connection than I have with my liver? And you've shown me, no, it will never be a greater connection than I've had with my liver. But for me, there is a joy and theater in slowly getting to know somebody over the course of an hour. So it's not very slow. And just seeing just the pure play of it is very enjoyable and entertaining to me. So
yes, also this kind of theater that you do for yourself and accidentally also for the public.
Yes. It's obviously, it's more complicated than that. And I'm not telling you everything about myself. And if we were not recording ourselves, we would have a different conversation. But if we were not recording ourselves, I wouldn't have had the opportunity to meet you and talk. So, you know, there's good and there's bad. There's good and there's bad. Anyway, I think I've taken up a lot of your time, and what an amazing, fantastic talk. So I think unless you have any further questions for me, I think I'm going to leave it there.
No. That was the only one.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I'm going to end the broadcast.
It's a pleasure to speak to you.
The broadcast is ending, but